So we have Venus in Pisces from January 2nd to February 4th. When we're dealing with Venus and Pisces energy, we're dealing with idealism, right? Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces, and so we associate a lot of romance with Venus and Pisces. Why? Venus and Pisces energy is the antithesis of the hopeless romantic. It is the beautiful things. It is the flowers. It is the romance. It is the, sense of being drawn to something that you want to impose what you wish and want on that situation, on that individual, whatever the situation is. So when we talk about Venus and Pisces energy, sometimes you can see with the placement, there is a sense of idealism about what a relationship is, idealism about things that have value, but also a tendency to like beautiful things, gentle things, music that has a sort of softness to it, right? When we think of Venus, we can also think of like music and entertainment in a certain way. When you're thinking of the Venus in Pisces transit, you can see a pronounced attitude of people really pouring into what it is that they find alluring, things that draw them in, their fantasies, the ideals of the things that they wish and want to see. Venus in Pisces is not a pushy energy. It is not a very attention seeking energy. Venus is also money, as we know, so there can be a lot of tendency to spend money on what you want, what you wish, and not really being careful during this time, especially when we talked about Capricorn season, which we're in terms of your long-term goals. And so not letting those things conflict too much in, because Venus in Pisces is not an energy that it's not associated with financial security, right? It's not a placement. That's not what it represents, right? When we take Venus and we put it in Taurus, or even if we put it in like Scorpio or Capricorn, we're going to get a different result. So just being mindful of your spending and your money at this time, but also realizing that Venus in Pisces does allow for you to place value on things that don't always have the same level of, monetary value. Venus in Pisces is about the authenticity of the beauty. The what you are is enough energy is very Venus in Pisces. Venus will conjunct Saturn around the 17th, 18th. So there can be themes there around long term devotion to dreams and things that you idealize, especially if we're talking about relationships. It could be really seeing if you're on the same page in terms of the vision that you have for your relationship or your partnership. Now, around January 31st, there's going to be the conjunct between Venus and Neptune in Pisces. And so there could be themes there around creativity, even if we're thinking about aesthetics, the look, beauty, manipulating one's appearance, things like that. But Venus conjunct Neptune energy could also sometimes be home to this concept of like being very deluded, being very in your own world about what is real. We talk about Venus again, we're talking again about partnerships. We're talking about those interpersonal relationships. We're talking about money. We're talking about, this sense of value, what we're placing on things. So for some people, of course, it can be a positive if you are creative, if you are trying to work on a project, if you have a vision that you really want to come true, really utilizing that time. But also being mindful, depending on where it's falling in your chart, around just like being overly idealistic to the point where you aren't really living in reality and you don't want to make decisions on a whim where you're not clear on what the boundaries are. This is one of my favorite books. I talked about it before. I'm going to read a few lines from this book about Venus and Pisces. All right. When Venus is located in the dreamy, idealistic, romantic sign of Pisces, it often takes many experiences and many years to clarify what kind of love and what type of relationship one wants. So that clarity, I talk a lot about when I talk about Venus and Pisces, like boundaries and understanding what something is. Because remember, Pisces is not form, right? It's fluid water. It doesn't take shape, so it can kind of be whatever it needs to be. It also says a need for magical and romantic harmony, idealizes loved ones and love itself. Again, that could be a beautiful thing when you have that open love approach, but then it also says desires can be vague and unfocused, thus heightening vulnerability. When you're vulnerable, when you don't know what you truly want. Because they naturally prefer not to see their faults. They're talking about the faults of like other people. Sometimes in relationships, weaknesses or decadence of their partner, they can be dreamily romantic, give everything emotionally, but later realize that the partnership was largely based on negative emotions, pity, fear, obligation, sometimes based on their own desperation. Now, again, I'm not saying every Venus and Pisces person is like that, but I do want us to understand the energy. It is beautiful. It is creative. It gives us hope. Like there's a beautiful part of Venus and Pisces, but sometimes it can be evasive in what they truly want. It's not a direct energy. It's a very strong energy. It's not a very dominant energy, but Venus is exalted in Pisces, so it's a very strong one. People that have this placement, you see it and you can feel it quite well, But it does mean there is a need to sometimes define what you need from your partner, define what you need. Even if we're talking about Venus and business partnerships, define what it is so that things don't get blurry and then you end up not getting what you need. Remember, we talk about Venus, a lot of times I say a lot, like Venus, Libra energy, and seventh house, all that stuff about reciprocity. Like, what are you getting in return? So Venus and Pisces has to make sure that they are also receiving what they need out of relationships, partnerships that they align themselves with.